My neighbor asked me to stop looking through her window. I live on the 12th floor. I moved into the apartment because it was cheap. That should have been the first warning. It was a one-bedroom apartment on the 12th floor of an old building at the edge of the city. The elevator smelled like wet metal, the hallway lights flickered, and every door had at least 3 locks. But the rent was almost half of what I had been paying before, and I was tired of sleeping on my friend's couch. The landlord gave me the keys on a rainy Thursday evening. He was an older man with thick glasses and a face that looked permanently annoyed. He didn't say much while showing me the place. Just opened the door, pointed at the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom, and said, "Don't drill into the walls. Don't feed pigeons. Don't argue with neighbors." That was it. The apartment itself was fine. Small, but clean enough. The wallpaper was old and yellowed, the floors creaked, and the windows didn't close properly unless you pushed hard with both hands. But it had a balcony. And from the living room window, I could see the opposite building. That building was close. Too close, honestly. If I stood by my window, I could see straight into the apartments across from mine. Kitchens, bedrooms, living rooms. People watching TV. People eating dinner. People walking around in pajamas. I tried not to look. But when you live alone, and your apartment is quiet, and the only thing moving outside your window is other people's lives, your eyes start drifting. Especially at night. Across from me, slightly lower and to the left, there was an apartment with blue curtains. I noticed it on my second night. The curtains were always open. Inside, there was an old woman. At least, I thought she was old. She had long gray hair, pale skin, and she always wore the same dark robe. Every night, around 11:30, she would sit by the window in a wooden chair and look outside. Not at the street. Not at the sky. At my building. At first, I thought it was nothing. Old people stare out windows. That's normal. But after a few nights, I realized something strange. She wasn't just looking at my building. She was looking directly at me. I told myself it was just a coincidence. There were hundreds of windows in my building. Maybe she was looking at someone else. Maybe she couldn't even see me clearly from that distance. So I tested it. The next night, I turned off all the lights in my apartment. I stood in the dark, far away from the window, near the kitchen doorway. Her apartment was lit by one yellow lamp behind her chair. She was already there, sitting, still, facing my building. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then I slowly stepped to the left. Her head moved to the left. I stepped back to the right. Her head followed. My stomach tightened. I raised my hand. She raised hers. Not like a wave. More like she was copying me. I dropped my hand immediately and moved away from the window. That night, I closed the curtains in my living room for the first time. The next morning, I felt stupid. It was just an old woman. Maybe lonely. Maybe confused. Maybe she had some kind of dementia and thought I was someone she knew. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and tried to work. Around noon, someone knocked on my door. Not a hard knock. 3 soft taps. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I waited. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty. But there was an envelope on the floor. No stamp. No name. Just a plain white envelope, slightly damp around the edges. I picked it up and went back inside. There was one piece of paper in it. Written by hand. Only one sentence. "Please stop looking through my window." I stood there for a long time, holding the paper. My first thought was that someone in the opposite building had seen me watching and complained. Fair enough. I mean, I had been looking. Not in a creepy way, at least that's what I told myself. But still. I folded the paper and put it on the kitchen counter. That night, I kept my curtains closed. At 11:30, I heard something tap against the glass. At first, I thought it was rain. But the sky was clear. I muted the TV and listened. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft taps. Coming from the living room window. I didn't move. My apartment was on the 12th floor. There was no fire escape outside. No balcony on that side. Nothing but empty air between my window and the street below. Tap, tap, tap. I walked toward the living room very slowly. The curtains were closed. Behind them, the glass gave another quiet tap. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because I needed proof that I was overreacting. Maybe because some dumb part of my brain still believed there had to be a normal explanation. I reached out and pulled the curtain aside. The window was empty. No bird. No branch. No reflection of a neighbor's light. Just the dark glass and my own face staring back at me. Then I saw her. Not in my window. Across the gap. The old woman was sitting in her chair with the blue curtains open behind her. She was facing me. And she was smiling. It was the first time I had ever seen her smile. It was too wide. Her hand was raised, one finger extended, tapping against her own window from the inside. Tap, tap, tap. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. My phone buzzed on the couch. I picked it up. Unknown number. The message said, "Thank you for opening them." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen with every light on, staring at the living room curtains and listening to every small noise in the apartment. The next morning, I went downstairs to talk to the landlord. He lived on the first floor in a small office behind the mailboxes. When I showed him the note, his expression changed. Not much, but enough. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Which apartment?" he asked. I told him. "The blue curtains. Opposite building. Slightly lower and to the left." He stared at me. Then he said, "There is no building opposite your living room." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The landlord stood up and walked past me toward the front entrance. I followed him outside into the gray morning light. He pointed up at my side of the building. "Your living room faces the old parking lot," he said. I looked. And for a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. There was no building across from mine. No windows. No blue curtains. No old woman. Just a cracked parking lot with weeds growing through the concrete, a few rusted cars, and a line of dead trees near the fence. I stood there, staring. My apartment was on the 12th floor. From my living room window, I should have been looking at the parking lot. But every night, I had seen another building. Every night, I had watched her. The landlord didn't ask many questions. He just said, "Stay away from that window after dark." That should have been enough. I should have packed my things and left that same day. But people are stupid when they're scared. We try to explain things. We try to make impossible things feel normal. So I went back upstairs. During the day, the living room window showed exactly what it should have shown. The parking lot. The dead trees. The gray fence. No opposite building. No old woman. I stood there for almost an hour, waiting for something to change. Nothing did. Then I noticed the envelope on my kitchen counter. The one with the note inside. I opened it again. The sentence had changed. It no longer said, "Please stop looking through my window." Now it said, "Tonight, look closer." I dropped the paper like it had burned me. For the rest of the day, I stayed out of the living room. I worked from my bedroom. Ate dinner standing in the kitchen. Kept every light on. At 11:20, I told myself I would not go near the window. At 11:25, I locked the balcony door. At 11:29, the apartment went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The fridge stopped humming. The pipes stopped ticking. Even the traffic outside disappeared. Then, at exactly 11:30, the curtains in the living room moved. Not like wind. like someone had touched them from behind. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. The curtains moved again, slowly, as if fingers were sliding along the fabric from the other side. I wanted to run to the front door. I wanted to call someone. I wanted to do anything except walk toward that window. But then I heard her voice. Very faint, very old, coming from the living room. Closer. I covered my mouth with my hand. The voice came again. Look closer. I don't know why I listened. Maybe because fear does something strange to your body. It doesn't always make you run. Sometimes it makes you obey. I took one step into the living room. Then another. The curtains were still closed. But there was light behind them. Yellow light. The same yellow light from her apartment. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab the curtain. I pulled it aside. The parking lot was gone. The opposite building was back. It stood there in the darkness, close enough that I could see the cracks in the walls and the dirty corners of the windows. Every apartment in that building was dark. Except hers. The room with the blue curtains. She was sitting in the chair. Smiling. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, standing in the darkness of the room, were people. A lot of people. Men. Women. Children. All pale. All still. All staring at me. The old woman lifted one finger and pointed at the glass. Not her glass. Mine. I looked at my reflection in the window. At first, it was normal. My face. My kitchen lights behind me. My terrified eyes. Then another reflection appeared behind my shoulder. A woman. Long gray hair. Dark robe. Smiling. I spun around. No one was there. When I turned back to the window, the old woman was no longer sitting in her chair. Her chair was empty. The people behind it had moved closer to the glass. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. The message said, "You saw my window. Now I can see yours." I backed away from the window. The moment I moved, the people across from me moved too. Not like normal people. Not walking. They slid forward in the dark room, all at the same time, their pale faces pressing closer to the glass. The old woman was still gone. But I could hear her breathing. Not from the opposite building. From inside my apartment. Slow. Wet. Right behind me. I didn't turn around. I ran. I grabbed my keys, phone, and wallet from the kitchen counter and rushed to the front door. The hallway outside was dark. Completely dark. The lights were dead. I slammed my door shut and hit the elevator button over and over again. Nothing. Somewhere inside the wall, something clicked. Then the elevator doors opened. The inside was full of yellow light. The same yellow light. I stepped back. From inside the elevator, a woman's voice whispered, "Wrong way." Then every door in the hallway started tapping. Tap, tap, tap. All at once. Every apartment door. 3 soft taps each. I ran for the stairs. I don't remember how many flights I went down. I just remember the sound of my shoes hitting concrete and my own breathing tearing at my throat. 12th floor. 11th. 10th. 9th. The numbers on the wall passed in a blur. Then I reached the 8th floor. And stopped. Because the stairwell window was open. There shouldn't have been anything outside it except the side of the building and empty air. But through that window, I saw the opposite building. The blue curtains. The old woman. She was standing now. Not sitting. Standing in her room, facing me through the stairwell window. Her mouth opened. And from somewhere very close, I heard her say, "You look too long." I kept running. 7th floor. 6th. 5th. 4th. Every stairwell window showed the same thing. Her building. Her window. Her smile getting wider each time. By the 3rd floor, I could hear footsteps above me. Bare feet. Slapping against the stairs. Fast. Too fast. I reached the lobby and threw myself against the front door. It didn't open. I pulled the handle so hard my shoulder burned. Locked. From the inside. Outside, through the glass doors, I could see the street. Cars passing. A man walking a dog. A woman carrying groceries. Normal life. 10 feet away from me. I screamed and hit the glass with both fists. No one looked. Not the man. Not the woman. Not a single person. It was like I was behind a screen they couldn't see. Then the lobby lights flickered. Once. Twice. And the glass doors went dark. Not because the lights had gone out. Because something was standing behind me. I saw its reflection first. Long gray hair. Dark robe. A smile too wide for a human face. I turned around. The lobby was empty. But the elevator doors were open. Inside was the yellow light. And this time, there was a chair in the elevator. A wooden chair. The same chair from her apartment. A piece of paper lay on the seat. I didn't want to go near it. But the front door was locked, the stairwell behind me had gone silent, and every exit in that lobby suddenly felt like a mouth waiting to close. So I stepped toward the elevator. The paper had one sentence written on it. Someone has to sit by the window. The elevator bell rang. The doors began to close. I jumped back. Just before they shut, I saw hands. Pale hands. Dozens of them. Pressed against the inside walls of the elevator, where there had been nothing a second before. I ran to the security desk. There was an old landline phone sitting there. I grabbed it. No dial tone. Just breathing. Then her voice came through the receiver. "You can leave," she whispered. I froze. "You can leave," she said again. "But you have to invite someone to look first." The lobby door clicked. Unlocked. I turned slowly. The glass was clear again. The street was there. People were moving. The way out was open. All I had to do was run. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new message. It was a photo. A photo of my living room window. Taken from inside my apartment. My curtains were open. My lights were on. And in the reflection of the glass, I saw myself standing in the lobby. Behind me, written on the dark window in fogged letters, were 3 words. "Bring me eyes." I don't remember leaving the building. I remember the cold air hitting my face. I remember running across the street without looking for cars. I remember turning back only once. My building looked normal. Old. Gray. Ugly. Every window dark except mine. My living room window was glowing with yellow light. And someone was sitting there. Not the old woman. Me. I saw myself sitting in the wooden chair, facing the street, perfectly still. Then the curtains closed. I slept in a hotel that night. Actually, I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with the lights on, staring at the door, waiting for 3 soft taps. They never came. In the morning, I went to the police. I told them someone had broken into my apartment. That was the only part I could say without sounding insane. 2 officers came with me back to the building. The landlord was gone. His office was empty. No papers. No keys. No furniture. Just dust on the floor and one old pair of glasses on the desk. The officers took me upstairs. My apartment door was locked. No damage. No signs of forced entry. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. Except the living room. The curtains were open. The chair was there. The wooden chair from the elevator. It sat facing the window. The officers asked if it belonged to me. I said no. They didn't believe me. One of them walked to the window and looked outside. He frowned. "What building is that?" he asked. My blood went cold. I didn't answer. The other officer joined him at the window. Both of them stood there, staring. I stayed by the door. I could see the yellow light reflecting on their faces. One of the officers raised his hand slowly. Then someone across the gap raised theirs. The officer whispered, "Do you see that woman?" I ran. I left everything behind. Clothes. laptop, passport, money, everything. For 3 months, I stayed with friends, then in short-term rentals, then finally moved to another city. I changed my number. I deleted every photo of that apartment. I told myself it was over. Last week, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject, no message, just an attachment. A photo. It was taken from outside my new apartment building. From high up, directly facing my bedroom window. In the photo, my curtains were open. I was asleep in bed. And in the dark reflection of the glass, behind me, stood the old woman. Long gray hair, dark robe, smiling. Under the photo, there was one line of text. You should not have shown them my window. I haven't opened my curtains since. But every night at 11:30, I hear it. Not from the window anymore. From my phone. Tap, tap, tap. And last night the screen turned on by itself. Unknown number. One message. Tell someone this story. Then another message came through. Make them look.